this is my review of Cells at Work. Okay, so this episode is actually the fight with Cancer Cell proper, or at least the start of it, and it actually has a bit of an interesting twist that happens toward the middle of it, which I will get to in a minute. So, it starts off with a recap of all of the last episode and about how everybody is kind of fighting and struggling to actually keep everybody else safe now that the harmful bacteria are now loose in the body and Cancer Cell is back from the dead. It starts off with where it actually left off, with the 3 immune cells being temporarily defeated by Cancer Cell, only to discover that they're actually not only alive, but that NK Cell actually managed to protect Memory T and 1146, and remarks that if that's the best he's got, and points out that he seems to only really use the same attacks over and over, and that there's really no way for him to actually be unpredictable. And there's no real way for him to actually defend himself if he's just going to use the same attacks over and over. And then asks why he even came to life in the first place if he's just going to use the same methodology that he came up with before. And he openly admits that he has his reasons, but that he's not going to share them for the time being. And points out that she's actually got bigger problems to deal with. And then as Memory T and 1146 free themselves, a bunch of the puppets from our last episode actually emerged from the floor, and as Cancer Cell points out, they're actually made of his own tissue, which is why they're puppets. They're not sentient like he is. They're made from his tissue, and that he can control them, and that they all have his same abilities. So there's no real way they're actually going to be able to put up a fight against a whole bunch of them. But as it turns out, he's completely wrong about that, because Memory T is, technically speaking, a different person from before, and he has memorized all of the attacks that Cancer Cell's antigen data, which means he is basically a different person from before. Case in point, he knows firsthand all the different tactics that Cancer Cell is capable of using, and is able to use that to his advantage. Case in point, he's able to issue his orders to 1146 and NK to get them to make sure that they're able to actually do their job and kill all the Cancer Cell puppets before moving in on Cancer Cell himself. And even openly admits that Cancer Cell isn't going to be able to beat him since he's memorized all his movements, and that he stands no chance of actually beating him. But then, and this is where the twist actually comes in, Regulatory T Cell actually shows up out of the blue and begins defending Cancer Cell. As it turns out, and as the name implies, regulatory T cells in the body are designed to rein in the immune system so that they can't actually harm parts of the body that need to actually be protected. And technically speaking, Cancer Cell is technically part of the cell's body. He was born of the body, which means that they can't actually defend all the different cells. So yeah, which means they can't attack him. They can't attack Cancer Cell basically, because Regulatory T Cell just kind of shows up out of the blue, and through virtue of doing her job, she winds up becoming an antagonist for the episode. So yeah, they have no chance. So yeah, and she quickly shows that she's way too powerful for them to actually face off against. Combined with Cancer Cell, who can basically manipulate his body in any way he wants, they really have no way of actually defeating him. Sure enough, Cancer Cell takes advantage of the situation by intervening and trying to attack Memory T while he's distracted and confused. Only to stab 1146 instead, who shielded Memory T with his body, and is then put in a stasis chamber by Cancer Cell until he listens to what he has to say. And Cancer Cell's having none of it because he wants to get out and actually help his friends who are currently getting their ass handed to them by Regulatory T Cell. And Regulatory T Cell isn't listening to him either, pointing out that she can't let him out if he's planning to kill Cancer Cell. So basically, 1146 is forced to play nice and actually listen to what Cancer Cell has to say until he says what he has to say. So yeah. And also during the background of this episode, 3803, she actually has a bit of a glow up, I guess you could call it. She's, as we've established, she's currently with the platelets. She's trying to help escort them to safety, and they're having a bit of a rough go of it because of how messed up the intestines are now. But she's helping the. But she does vow that she will be a rock for them to actually look up to actually make sure that they feel safe. And basically she's just trying to be a role model for them so that they don't panic. Which is an interesting role for her to take, because we know she's been growing a bit as a person because now in the first season, since not only has she successfully navigated the circulatory system herself, although she did have a bit of help from 1146, but she's actually been growing up as a person in that she's trying to take more responsibility now that she's being graduated to mentor other red blood cells. Now that she's become a mentor, she now needs to actually focus on doing that, and case in point, she's now trying to be a better role model for the platelets, which is working out for her. And I'm proud of her. She's actually starting to grow a bit as a person and actually taking her job a little bit more seriously. So yeah, it's actually pretty interesting to watch. And also in the background while this is happening, Normal Cell and the remaining lactic acid bacterium are trying to flee alongside Gaba Cell, but they get washed away in a flood of something. I'm not entirely sure what, but something. But they get washed away and wind up somewhere else, and we'll get to them in a minute. But in any case, back to the fight that kind of sort of conceptual, at least somewhat matters, because Cancer Cell is kind of the major antagonist of the series. But back in the fight, as NK Cell and Killer T are trying to face off against Regulatory T Cell and getting their ass handed to them, because Regulatory T Cell is specifically designed to block all of their attacks and therefore cannot be defeated. Cancer Cell decides to have a little bit of a chat with 1146 and talk to him about his philosophy a little bit. As it turns out, he believes that he not only does he believe it's unfair that he's being, well, basically prosecuted for something that he didn't do, and also pointing out that in case that Regulatory T Cell is just doing their job in defending him, he points out that he does feel it's a little bit unfair about how they decide which people get die and which people don't. And case in point, he brings up the lactic acid bacterium as an example, since apparently he knew about that whole situation somehow. And asks 1146 why he would go life and limb for the lactic acid bacterium, yet won't defend a Cancer Cell. And 1146 gives a very obvious answer that lactic acid bacterium aren't harmful to the body, whereas Cancer Cell is. It's because Cancer Cell, if he's allowed to spread, he will destroy the body and eventually kill it. At which point Cancer Cell offers up another question: which is more important, the lives of the trillions of cells that live in the body, or the lives of the one body that they're designed to protect and keep safe? Pointing out that yes, if they continue fighting, the body will continue to survive, but they'll be continuing to struggle to protect the life of one body. Whereas if they defeat the body, yes, the cells will die, but they will eventually be liberated, which is an interesting way of looking at it, at least according to Cancer Cell. He openly admits that he believes that it's kind of unfair that society just kind of decided, that his body just kind of decided, hey, you're a harmful thing to this body, and yet he had no real choice in that. And also, he believes it's a little bit unfair that that they all work for the sake of the body when the body itself couldn't care less about them. So it's obvious. So yeah, this episode definitely gets a bit more preachy about the nature of cells in the human body and I'm pretty sure that was intentional. It gets very preachy about how the cells toil along in silence, and you really have no way of knowing that they're suffering. You just kind of live your life and take that kind of thing for granted. So, and Cancer Cell openly admits that he plans to change that. So, it's going to be interesting. And with that, he actually decides that he will let 1146 out, and once he's liberated the world, and 1146 openly admits that he doesn't believe that Cancer Cell will be able to put it off. But then Cancer Cell claims that he will put it off, since with his body combined with the conditions that have rapidly deteriorated in the large intestine, he actually believes that he now has everything he needs to actually liberate the body, as it were. And case in point, then extends his arms to release two giant arms from his back, and then absorbs all the toxins that are currently leaking into the large intestine, and absorbs them, and then becomes a literal winged god of the apocalypse. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I mean, conceptually, yes, it makes sense. Cancer cells are the most dangerous thing in the body, and naturally, they would be naturally disposed to destroy things. But the fact that he just kind of absorbs toxins into his body and then just becomes the apocalypse, it doesn't make much sense. I'm not sure. I mean, I get what they were going for, but it does. But from a story standpoint, it doesn't make much sense. I mean, yes, he does turn into a winged angel of the apocalypse, and it is a really cool scene and a really awesome scene, but it doesn't make much sense. He literally just sticks out his arms, absorbs some toxins into himself, and then mutates into a winged angel. It's weird, but I guess it works. At which point he begins expanding to destroy the body. And then begins wrapping everything up in massive DNA coils that just kind of spring from the body, from the ground in the body, and begin wrapping themselves around everybody else in the room. Namely, regulatory T cell, memory T cell, and NK cell, killer with 1146 for the time being safe in his little chamber. And sure enough, 1146 asks his friends if they're all right. And Cancer Cell can't help but notice that note the contradiction that lives inside 1146, pointing out that he's naturally disposed to kill and cure the body of its different illnesses, but that he can't help but make friends with other people, even though he's naturally a natural-born killer, and that he finds that contradiction interesting, and that once he rebirths the world, that the two of them should be friends. At which point, NK Cell has enough of his rambling and goes to attack him again, having freed himself from all the different coils and stuff that are springing up from the ground. But again, regulatory T Cell just kind of gets in the way and intervenes and knocks her back. At which point, Memory T tries to attack as well, using a very similar attack from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, which this isn't the first time the series has referenced JoJo's, and it probably won't be the last. So yeah, I should mention that the series has, I didn't know this at the time during the first season when I reviewed it, but the series has made several references to JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, and I'm actually kind of okay with it. But NK Cell openly admits that he's just kind of using the same attacks he's always using, and that he never tries anything new, and that he needs to try some new things if he's ever going to be able to defeat regulatory T Cell. But he openly admits that that's just the way he's always been, and regulatory T Cell confirms this, pointing out that he's always been the same. He's never been one for strategy, and that if he doesn't change that, he's never going to be able to defeat her. So, and which winds up being a building moment for Memory T Cell, because now he's realizing that if he doesn't adopt some actual kind of strategy, he's never going to be able to get past regulatory T Cell and defeat Cancer Cell. So yeah, there's never going to be able to beat her otherwise, unless they find a way to actually get past her and actually kill Cancer Cell, which is easier said than done, since that's what regulatory T Cell's job is, to prevent the immune system from attacking itself, from attacking its own body. Which, in this case, just kind of it's kind of problematic, since Cancer Cell, despite being made of the body, is also the most dangerous thing that can happen to a body. So yeah, it's kind of an impasse. But in any case, it does end on one final scene, which is of Normal Cell and the lactic acid bacterium after being washed away, actually winding up in what they believe to be a safe environment until they discover, and Normal Cell declaring that he's going to keep the lactic acid bacterium safe until the bacterium themselves actually show up and begin mocking him and surrounding him, and pointing out that he's not going to be able to protect that lactic acid bacterium, and then proceed to break his leg so they can't run away, pointing out that they need some entertainment, since they kind of worked very hard to get into the large intestine, and they feel it's kind of dull. So him being their plaything is kind of a highlight for them. At which point, lactic acid bacterium decides to fight back and loses pitifully. It goes in for a punch. It gets its head handed to it, and it goes flying into the liquid. but it doesn't give up its determination though. It's overly determined to keep Normal Cell safe because it imprinted on him and it wants to keep Dad safe. So at which point Normal Cell realizes that the lactic acid bacterium is only going to get itself hurt if it continues to try and protect him. And sure enough, proceeds to adamantly try and scare it off, pointing out that it needs to run and save itself, and to get out of his sight, or else it'll be killed. And the lactic acid bacterium does do that rather tearfully and leaves. Although, based on the look on its face, it is going to come back with some reinforcements and try to actually save Normal Cell. At which point Normal Cell is captured by the harmful bacterium and they proceed to torture him. So yeah, that's the first half of this two-parter, and it's already kind of nuts. First off, I think we should I've already unpacked this, but I think we should reiterate the fact that Cancer Cell in this episode just straight up becomes an angel of death. I should mention that. It doesn't make any sense, and yet I love it so much. It is such a weird thing. I'm not entirely sure if that's what Cancer Cells are actually. I know they don't do that. I know they can't absorb toxins and then just replicate. Well, I mean, their job is to replicate, but I don't think they're supposed to be able to absorb. They don't normally absorb toxins and stuff from the body into themselves to become stronger. I know that's probably made up for anime bullshit, but I do like the idea that they're actually trying to fight Cancer Cell, and the immune system itself is actually being kept in check by another piece of the immune system. Regulatory T Cell is a character who is specifically designed, in the body, regulatory T cells are designed to keep the body safe, and unfortunately that includes Cancer Cells. So here she's just being an active antagonist through virtue of just doing her job, and it's kind of weird. It's kind of weird that the immune system can't actually recognize that Cancer Cell is a bad thing, and that the immune system needs to get rid of it. But here she is. She just shows up in the episode and is completely at odds with the three immune cells trying to kill Cancer Cell, which is problematic because the body kind of needs to purge cancer from itself, or it's going to die. So yeah, they kind of reach that impasse. They're not going to be able to beat Regulatory T Cell unless they figure out a strategy around her. And they also won't be able to actually defeat Cancer and stop his plan unless they actually figure out how to get through to Regulatory T Cell that Cancer is a bad thing and that they actually need to purge him from the body. But in case, yeah, and also the Regulatory T Cell, the lactic acid bacterium is just kind of gone from the episode, at least for the time being. So it's gotta be interesting if it comes back, because it's clearly going to try and come back with cavalry and try to clear out all of the bacterium so that I can save Dad. But in any case, that's my review of Cells at Work. What did you guys think? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below, or over on my Discord server, link in the description. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, be sure to follow me on Facebook and on Twitter in the description below. And also, if you want to help support the show, then be sure to check out my Patreon. It helps me out, and if you guys have a couple of bucks to spare, then be sure to check that out in the description or the end screen. And also, speaking of the end screen, if you want to see more videos from me, there's also videos there recommended based on what you've previously seen from me and what the most recent video is. So be sure to check those out in the description in the end screen. But in any case, thank you guys so much for watching. Until next time, I will see you guys in the next video. Peace!